Welcome again. We have another session of the seminar. This time we have Professor Bernardo Pagnoncelli. He's a professor in the business school, and he'll be talking today about an investment strategy for pension funds. Thank you very much, Bernardo.
Thanks, Rodrigo. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Let's see. I usually don't give 1 hour talks. I usually give 15 or 20-minute talks in conferences. So it took a lot of time for me to think about exactly how I was going to tell what I'm doing. And since this is a seminar in my university with many of my colleagues, it's going to be longer, and I'm going to talk about the stuff I do in a broader sense, meaning instead of talking about the problem that I'm working on, I'm going to talk about the area and my view of the area. It's going to be more ambitious in this sense, given the time that I have. Because usually in conferences we talk about one aspect of the research, right? That's what we have, unless you are a plenary speaker, which I am not. So, first of all, this talk is about pension funds, which is a topic inside the field of finance, and I'm going to start attacking finance. So there's a preamble before the introduction. More seriously, I'm not going to attack finance, but I'm going to talk about a little bit about why I got into finance, because my research is mainly in operations research, optimization, computational aspects, theoretical aspects. So, people that know me, let me see if I have something to write here. I don't know, there's theory and there's applications, right? And many people in this room, they work all over the spectrum, I would say, right? I am a guy that also collaborates with people here and there. This work is certainly here. Okay, I do much more theoretical stuff without a clear application. I also work here, but this talk is going to be pretty close to a full application talk, meaning the tools that I'm going to present, everybody has to understand. If you don't understand anything about the talk, it's my fault. Okay, the tools are really straightforward. Maybe even an undergrad student can understand everything that I'm going to talk about it today. So, what do you mean with the tools, the mathematical tools, the formulations, the technology I'm going to use to solve the problems. This is trivial, okay? The more interesting aspect, I think, is, I'm going to get into details, but essentially is, I'm going to talk about an application. So how can we generate meaningful results about this application? I'm really concerned about the application side. It's not like a toy problem, okay? That's why I put it there. When you work on theory, you can apply your theory to a small problem. That's good enough, because you're showing that your theory can be used to solve problems. So, I think financial problems are very interesting. I like working on them. I think it's a very rich source of problems, very relevant. But then you start reading the papers, and there's something called mathematical finance, which became a field on its own. And in my opinion, it's a bit frustrating, because you start working on those topics, and then at some point it becomes detached from the real world. It's really weird. Mathematical finance became something. It's like a different field. The name finance is there because it originated from finance. But in the end, not everybody, many of the problems being solved are really, I'm trying to solve this aspect of mathematical finance. For example, in continuous time, I started reading about that and learning about the tools. And then there's a mathematical finance researcher just entered, so I bought a book. I really like, when I do research, I really like to buy different things and learn about different topics. I bought a book by Rogers, which is a very famous guy in the field of mathematical finance. He's a very nice guy also. I happened to meet him once. And then Merton's problem, which is a very famous problem in finance. I thought that the book would be more like applied and more intuition. Chapter 1, introduction. Chapter 2, 34 subsections. Each subsection is a variation on Merton's problem. 34. Section 1, this variation, this variation, this variation. Then you try to solve. That's what I mean. In the end, a significant part of the research is finding small variations and trying to have closed form solutions for those variations. None of the variations is really satisfying. You look at them, small change, small change, small change. If you want to do 2 changes at a time, boom, everything falls. And he says that in the book. More motivation. Utility functions. This is Roger saying, not me, so that people cannot criticize me. He says, I think it's a very frustrating sentence in a way. All these forms of utility are very tractable, and if you do not assume one of those forms, you will rarely be able to get very far with the solution. I like this guy. He's very sincere. You know, he's saying, look, it's really dependent on the form of the utility. And on the other side, many people have been criticizing the use of utility functions. So if you want to change a little bit, boom, you can really not use what they built to get to the solution. Another thing that I read in the book, many people use the log-bound in motion assumptions. He says the actual dynamics of any asset is not currently modeled by that. Even if you assume that, he states, and I found this in other references as well, it is very hard to estimate the parameters of the model correctly. Another thing that I found in finance, and this is like one set of aspects. All the stuff that I bumped into when I was working in finance. There was this crisis in 2008, and many people were blaming people in academia because they were proposing models that were not useful, they did not capture what happened. There's this famous article, if you want to Google and download it, it's free. It talks about the formula that killed Wall Street. It's kind of related to the stuff here. It's a formula that it's simple, seems to be useful, but it's in the root of many of the problems that happened in 2008. So this article, I think, is very instructive. So maybe it's a bit unfair, but I think I got into finance by criticizing or trying to improve some of the aspects that I found that could be better. Okay, could be. I know. So, for example, the first paper that I published in finance was an alternative model for the Gaussian copula, for example. Okay, we published in a decent article, and we got positive reviews. I mean, people liked, and some people wrote us. So that's more or less the motivation. One final motivation, I kind of like this table. Suppose you do believe that things are normal. This guy made a very simple example. He's a researcher from Belgium, I guess. Schoutens is his name. He says, well, stuff happened. Those are dates of events that happen in the world. Okay, you see the dates? Those are the magnitudes of the drop in the stock exchange. Those events happen. And then he just calculated, under normality, what would be the frequency. Once every X years. So for example, this huge drop here, normality assumptions would assume it would happen once every 10 to the 53 years. This one here, once every 72,000 years. There's a few in 2008 here. Okay? Whether we are living in a very dramatic period, or maybe the assumptions are not the best to model asset dynamics, right? Maybe the last 30 years were crazy, but I don't think so. I really think this model maybe is not appropriate. Okay, so after attacking finance, seriously, I think it's I work with people in finance, I collaborate with them even in this university, but I really think they just don't move on for some reason. They get stuck to some of the models for I don't know which reasons, okay? And I think there are improvements that can be made. I think, I don't know, utility functions, sometimes it does not capture well the problem, but you have a closed form solutions. Bah. Sometimes, I don't know, log bound in motion assumptions, some continuous type models, you don't have the flexibility you need. That's how I got into the field. I entered into this story that I'm going to tell you guys today because there is a guy who told me not to name him. He worked in a company in Santiago. He contacted a friend of mine, Arturo, and he said, I want to talk to you guys. I work in pension funds, and I think there's something wrong going on. I remember it was like a Tuesday. I didn't come to the university. I went to his office, which is in Las Condes. We sat down with him for 2 hours, and he said, I think we need to rethink the way people invest in pension funds. And I said, wonderful. He said, I have some data, but I cannot work with you guys. I'm just giving an idea. So if you want to work in the idea, fine. And then let me know about the results. That's how the story went. So he's like a mysterious co-author in this work. That's how I got into that. We went there like 3 times after that. He's kind of a Snowden in a way. That's very good. I like that. He's kind of a Snowden. He showed me data. I asked him, can you give me the data? He said, no. Can I take a picture? He said, no. It's kind of a Snowden. Really, this happened. It's It's a very interesting guy. And I have to say that he gave the motivation for the work. What we did, hopefully, was to follow his suggestion and try to reach conclusions that he found reasonable. Okay, he's kind of an advisor of this project. So before all that, pension funds. It seems like a very important topic because everybody here is enrolled in pension funds, right? You have to put your money there, etc. So, quick introduction, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the system, and then I'm going to go through what we did. For those who never heard about pension funds, and again, for the finance people, the first part of the talk is going to be a bit simple. There are two basic schemes, defined benefit, defined contribution. Very brief explanation of each. Defined benefit is something that our parents or older people, or maybe, I don't know, Chile between the 50s and 1980 had, which is the employer or a sponsor contributes to the fund. There's a fund, a whole bunch of money, and there's a promise of monthly payment upon retirement based on salary, total time in the company, and other aspects, okay? It was very hard to connect the amount of money you put with the amount of money that you would receive. It was much more complicated. If you guys know a little bit about the Chilean system, it's quite different. Now it's totally trivial to compare what you put with what you get, because that's essentially the same thing. There are no other ways that states are going to help you, okay? We have to put 10% every month. If you don't put more, that's it. You choose where to invest. When you retire, that's the amount of money you have, and then you can switch to some monthly payments until you die. But this is based on the money that you saved. There's no help from anyone.
But the defined benefit, the market in Brazil is by the employer or by the government?
By the employer. By the employer. Actually, you can Google if you like. There are several cases in the US where, even in Brazil it happened. Some companies, they had some assumptions 40 years ago, and then when people retired, the age pyramid changed, and then they couldn't pay. I know several examples in Brazil. You can give examples if you know, you can help. But there are several examples of institutions that broke down because of that. Private and public institutions as well. Really? I didn't know. Okay. It's a good example of a private company. Okay. So, this talk is not about this discussion. I think this discussion is very, very interesting. Actually, it's one of the topics that I plan to study in the years to come. This talk is going to be about DC, because this talk is about Chile. And Chile is a prototype example of a pure DC country. I mean, again, you put your money, you save, and that's what you have. Oh, I don't want to save. I want to live my life wild. Well, when you retire, you're going to have less money. Okay, unless you have rich parents, unless you have other sources. But if you think about the money that you put, that's it. Again, I don't want to make a discussion about that, but you do see a switch from DB to DC in many countries. Again, there are still people that defend DB. There was this famous Comisión Bravo in Chile. They really like DC. They said, no, let's not come back to DB. DB is very bad. In the region, Brazil is still very strong in DB for historical reasons. Some countries in Europe as well. But you do see the switch in many other cases for DC. The causes, again, I'm not an expert on that specifically. Underfunding, change the population dynamics. There's this whole issue that capitals go faster than labor. So if you put your capital and you wait some time, the capital will grow. And if you cross your fingers, you're going to retire well. If I'm not mistaken, this is happening in Chile right now because the system is kind of young. It started in 81, 30 or something years. You are starting to see if this is good or not, because in the end, this is theory. If a guy retires and says, well, I'm living well or not, that's very debatable, okay? So we are seeing now if this system is going to be good for Chile or not, and all of you here, if you continue to live in Chile, will see if it will be good or not when you retire, right? Okay. So this problem is very relevant, but again, 80% of a country's GDP, more money than all US companies. In my opinion, it is a portfolio optimization problem with very specific constraints. Few people agree on that. And to the surprise of you, And for me, no one cares about this problem in our community. That's the strongest evidence I could find. Those are two of the main conferences in the area, I would say, one more theoretical, one more applied. Philadelphia, we have, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, more than 1,000 talks, probably more than 1,000 talks. There was one talk and there was a no-show. The guy didn't appear. And in Pittsburgh, there were two. Pittsburgh probably they have like 700 talks, right? There were two, one was me. So, I don't know. I have no explanations for that. That's just a fact. You go on the web and if you try to look energy to see what happens. I did. I think the number was like 472. Even portfolio optimization, 200 and something. That's an excellent point, but the thing is, I really see it as an optimization problem. I want to face the problem as an optimization one. In finance, you do have, I don't know the numbers, you do have more than that, okay? And they attack with the very different tools, including optimization. But there's statistics, there is regression analysis, there's continuous time models, there are more. But I'm surprised that in our community, healthcare, if you put healthcare in informs, you're going to see 300 hits. And you also see healthcare optimization. I don't know. People from other areas also deal with healthcare problems. But in our field, no one cares.
But how is it different from there's a lot of work on portfolio optimization by using stochastic optimization, for example. Right? There's still portfolio optimization. What makes it different from
I try to answer here.
Actually, now you have a meeting in Chile that a month ago was in charge of
I mentioned.
More people from economics, finance, I don't know finance, but
more from economics and finance. True, true. I don't know if you read the document. It's like that. I'm a foreigner. I found afiliados is the word in Spanish, right? They wrote afilados 4 times in the document. And I think afilados is not exactly a good word. Correct me if I'm wrong. So to give an example, you can Google if you like. So yeah, there was a commission, but the quality of the work, we can discuss that later. Anyway, so Chile changed in the 1980-81. We have to put 10% of our salary. I do. I hope all you guys do. It's a 3-pillar system. What we do is the mandatory. There's the voluntary, which is the APV. You can put as much money as you, not as much as you like. You can put more than the 10%. And there are significant tax benefits if you do that. And the solidarity is if a guy contributes 10% and in the end his savings are too low in a way, the state puts more money. That's the only case where the state puts more money to help the guy's pension. With a cap, that's true, that's true, that's true. 10% with a cap, that's true.
So how can I make it?
True.
Unless you want to reduce your savings.
That's true, that's true. I agree. I didn't talk about this. I'm good, it's good that you mentioned. There's an important concept called this is essentially suppose your salary is going to be stable your whole life to make things simpler. And that's the percentage of your salary that you're going to earn when you retire. That's a very important number, right? Suppose you make X now, you want to know how much you're going to make when you retire. It's 10% of what you made, 40%, 70%. And what Hervé is saying is true. People think that if they put 10% and cross their fingers, they're going to have 80%, which is false. Do this exercise. If you put 10%, check what's going to be your replacement rate. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
That's a major problem.
It is, it is. Again, if you think it's going to be 40% and you're going to live until 110,
You better die soon.
or as Hervé said,
You work for longer. The retirement is.
or you contribute more. I mean, or you commit suicide. Actually, in Japan, that was a suggestion made by the minister. He said you should commit suicide.
But I think that there's kind of agreement that because retirement age should be just higher. 60 and 65. I mean, if you live, the life expectancy is 83.
Again, I agree with what Hervé said. You have to. What's your target? What's your target? I mean, This is also a topic that...
Actually, if you live, when you retire, your life expectancy is not 82, it must be 90, 95.
Probably. So,
But why then listen? Why,
Go ahead.
Why a cap? Why a cap on your salary?
why they have a cap? I don't know.
Because maybe if you put a cap, maybe the purpose of this plan is not to give you a fraction of your wage. It's just to maintain you alive, barely alive.
Like minimum standards.
So don't think of your retirement, pension as a substitute for your wage.
Interesting.
Think that just, bare minimum to stay alive. And then on your own, you can do other things.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
But this might be for tax relief, right? The money that you discount is tax free. Right? So if you allow a free amount, you can deduct 90% of their salary. Tax free, then people would use this.
Could be.
If I am poor, 10% is the food.
I was going to say that. The guy puts 10% and there's nothing else to do, right?
You postpone taxes and you have to pay at the end.
Sure.
You have to pay at the end.
It's
So
money
you
that
say
government is not
90%
paying,
and
right?
you have to pay a lot of taxes later.
Right, but that's money that government is not
Okay, let's move on. I don't wanna lock you guys here for lunch. So there are 6 AFPs in Chile. Those are the ones that you guys know probably. And workers need to decide where to put their money. There's A, B, C, D, and E. Riskier from safer. Okay? Everybody knows in which fund you guys are in right now? Who knows? Please raise your hand. Who knows? Which fund you are in? Okay, Do you know, Tito? You raise your hand. Okay. Okay, good. We are a very strange crowd. I'm going to tell you why. By the way, more polemic, but I want to discuss this. People complain that the taxes are too high. I was checking the comparison among OECD countries, and I disagree. Chile is in the lower part of the list. Anyway, countries are different, etc. But if you rank them, people say, oh, the AFP estatal, it's not high. I mean, high compared to what? To the OECD countries? That's not true. This is what defines the funds. You have limits. Fund E, you can only put up to 5% on risky instruments, and Fund A, you can put up to 80%, and you have the whole range for the middle funds. I kind of like that. This is from the page of the Asociación. Very simple questions. They went to the street. Have you ever heard about multi-funds? 58% said no. Are you aware of the number of multi-funds available? 76% gave a wrong answer. Do you know in which fund you are right now? That's the question I had. That's why I said you guys are a strange crowd. 66% no. Do you know which multi-fund is the riskiest? I mean, draw your own conclusions, but everything that we're talking about here doesn't make sense for a gigantic majority of the population, right? Because if you don't know those basic answers, there's no point in continue discussing more technical stuff. Okay? Anyway. I'm going to mention that's not the central problem that I'm working, but I think this problem is very interesting. I tried to attack a few years ago, but I think there's more work to be done. Many people do not decide actively. They just start working, put their money, they don't even know that they have to choose. So the government chooses for them. I had the chance, I was lucky enough to ask this question to the superintendent. I said, good morning, why that? They put the person on B, and then when the person turns 6 on C, and then on D. The answer was, just made sense to us. It's a life cycle problem. You are younger, you can face more risk. And as you get older, you are willing to face less risk. I understand that, but there are several other ways of doing that. For example, why 35 and not 34? And what differences this can make in a person's life? They didn't answer me. But again, you have to choose. Look, if she said, no, she is a very smart person. It's not the current one. She was for 8 years the superintendent. Come on, she got tired. Come on. She was trying to use some value at risk. I really respect her. I think she's a very clever person, but she couldn't put this into a model. So an open problem, very good for a student, I guess, even a master's student. Propose the best strategy according to some criteria. For example, I want to have a minimum. I want to have 80% of my salary with high probability. Pick the criterion. I think it's a very clearly stated problem, And I have to admit, the first person that mentioned this problem to me was Professor Castaneda, which is sitting there. So I think this problem is still relevant.
But so in what cases the government does that?
When you don't do anything, when you don't choose your fund.
Why don't they, why don't they send, or they send a letter or an email and so people have to choose? Because it depends on many personal things.
I agree, but that's a very good question. I think they do send an email, but people don't care. Some people just don't care. They don't understand. Susana, take a look at this. I mean, what are you talking about? I mean, the guy doesn't understand. He said, "Oh, I think the government is doing what's best for me." So, anyway, students, if you want to attack this problem, I think it's very, in researchers as well, if you want to join me on this, I would be happy. So,
it has to be simple, right? You need to assume that it's not iPad. But between B and C, I know there's not that much difference.
Okay, but still, it's okay. I would ask first some questions. Does it make any difference to define, or this is good enough? I don't know. I would like to be convinced that this is good enough. It seems good, okay? I don't know. I'm 35 years old and I'm in Fund A, so I'm not that far from that. Bernardo, personally, I'm saying what I'm on A, and I'm 35. I don't know if I'm going to change to B or C at the end of the year when I turn 36. Okay, so I'm on A, not on B, and A has been doing well in the last year, so I did better than that, but we'll never know. Okay, so I'm not criticizing AFPs, they have done well. If you look at the numbers, they have done well. I'm really not criticizing them. One thing is that, if you ask me, does it make any difference to switch between AFPs, my answer would be no. Another professor from this university, Viviana Fernandes, she wrote an article saying that there is herd behavior. They all move very similarly. So in this talk, when I refer to AFPs, it's all of them. I don't see significant differences between the AFPs. Maybe services, the web pages, the way they help you when you go in the streets, talk to them, go to their store. But aside from that, in my opinion, this is also, some people criticize me, but this mysterious guy that talked to me in Las Condes, he said, I think they follow active investment strategies. They have a committee of experts. This committee makes decisions. Let's put the money of people that have money on A, on this and these assets. Okay, they sit down, they have a committee, and they make decisions. And they make rebalancing. Oh no, let's move that. Oh, the conditions changed. Now the economy is more unstable. Let's leave Malaysia and let's go to Israel. I don't know. Okay, they do that. And those are the returns, in case this is publicly available, that we didn't make that up. Take a quick look, please. A, B, C, D, and E from 2003 to 2014. That's the interval of time that we have full data available in Chile. Before that, it's not full data. And after that, I started this work in November 2015. So I didn't have 2015 complete.
Those are yearly returns?
Those are, yeah, those are yearly returns. And if you don't like percentages, you have money in the end. So if you have 100, that's money. That's really straightforward if you want to think in terms of pocket.
I guess you can do such a table after 208.
Only after 208. It would be interesting because of, good point. So, with the help of my colleague and friend here, he said, I think you need better definitions of passive and active. And even though I criticize finance people, I like them, and I put Hervé's definition. He sent me by email a couple of days ago, so thanks, Hervé. Passive investment is a style of management associated with mutual or exchange-traded funds, where a fund's portfolio mirrors a market index. If you are from finance, this makes sense to you. If you are not, maybe that doesn't mean anything, right? I'm going to try to explain this a little bit, but essentially, you don't rebalance often, and you try to follow some index. You guys watch TV, the SP 500. I want to make an investment such that it moves together with the SP 500. That would be an ETF, for example. And active management is the use of a human element, such as a single manager, co-managers, a team of managers that actively manage a fund's portfolio. They rely on analytical research, forecasts, and their own judgment and experience in making those decisions. In general, it's hard to beat the market, okay? I'm a personal believer of passive investment. And the debate is fascinating. If you like people fighting against each other, I couldn't resist, and I'm going to put a few sentences that I found in respected publications. This is, you're supposed to laugh, okay? Active managers were something that no practical man of affairs knew about, much less read the obscure academic journals in which those in the cloister read, published, and referenced. That's us. Second, nobody with a seat at the high table was all that interested in ivory tower mumbo jumbo. That's what we do. And finally, this one is the best. Would any among us ever want to be called passive? Try it. This is my husband. He's passive. This is in a scientific publication, pretty respected one, okay? I'm not going to mention which one. You can Google and find it, okay? So people from active, they clearly dislike passive strategies, as you can see in those interesting sentences here, okay? My husband, he's passive. Now our question. Our question was quite simple. We said, so if they invest actively, this guy that called us to his office, he said, I think you guys can try and check what would happen if AFPs invested passively. He said, why don't you test the passive alternative? Makes sense, the question, right? There are several index funds in Chile. You can invest in any of them through many different banks. You can call a bank and say, I want to invest in this passive investment. You can, right? It's easy. So I want to see if all this rebalancing makes sense or not. It's a very simple question. I want to compare one strategy with what happened and see how this strategy performed. Again, we discussed with a lot of people which strategy we were going to implement. We decided for 1 year. Every year we have the chance to rebalancing. During the year you have to hold still. You cannot do anything during the year. Anything. A war started between Canada and the United States, to say something ridiculous. No changes. A war starts between China and Russia. No changes. You have to stay for 1 year. On January the 2nd, you make a decision and you go to Cancun. You got it? Drink margaritas. And then you come back on January the 1st, take a shower, clean yourself. January the 2nd, you have to make decisions again. That's my strategy.
Only for the passive.
Only for the passive. I mean, yeah, only for the passive. I'm gonna get into details for now, but I will not rebalance between this. I'm gonna cheat at first, and then I'm gonna talk about the strategy. People in finance, they have a very good definition of what a strategy is. A strategy is something that you do without knowing the future, of course. But I'm gonna cheat. When we started this work, we thought, is it possible? Is there any strategy like that that you can beat the AFPs? Maybe there isn't, right? So the first thing we did was, let us cheat. Let us see if we could have found one knowing the future. You see the idea?
Just to clarify, when you say rebalance the portfolio, you have several index funds and you balance them among them?
That's it.
Okay.
That's it.
S&P, I don't know, index funds of big companies, whatever.
Yeah. No, I'm going to show you which ones I have. I have 6. I'm going to show you the ones.
All index.
Go ahead.
Why do you need on the calendar year? Yeah, because maybe in January something happened, people get out of vacation, they're still right. So if you have 10 years, very much depend on what happens. If you do it, from April to April, maybe it's going to be that different.
I agree. I agree.
In December, people it's vacation time.
I agree. I agree. I agree. Let's see if it how it went like that. I agree. I agree. Could be, I don't know, different. Could be, yeah. Could be not calendar year. Could be more often rebalancing. I agree. I agree. We just decided because we wanted full data and we had full data yearly, but really nothing special. So just to convince you guys that it's not a crazy idea, I think no one can dispute that. I mean, this is respectable publications, and check the titles for yourselves. I mean, there's not much I can say. People are talking about that. This is very recent. Okay, the biggest funds, they are embracing, etc. I think it speaks for itself, I guess. So, answering Tito's question. Let me see if I have a couple of minutes for the ones who are not. Is this going to work? No, it's never going to work, right? Oh, it did. I need live slides, Marcos. if you go to this web page here, for you guys that never saw one, let's look at my preferred one. Ah, tá bien, aceptar, aceptar. Ah, how can I get rid of this? Aqui? Wow, gracias, João Pierre. I love that one. I put my money on that one, by the way. I'm a really open person. I tell everybody where I put my money. Around the world, right? People are listening to that. I put my money on IVV. Say it again?
You're changing the markets now.
You're really shorted.
The thing is, I put millions of pesos, not millions of dollars. That's my problem. So that's IVV for you guys that never saw an index fund. I think this part here is particularly nice. Those are the percentages invested in each field. And this part here, which is super, super cool, which is the percentages in each of the companies. I think you know all those companies here. Apple, Alphabet is Google. Microsoft, ExxonMobil, and those 10, they weight 18%. That's an index fund. The percentages are chosen because of the size of the companies in the market, not because someone decided that Apple, you need to invest 2.86%. Okay? Clear now, Tito? Perfect. Those are the instruments that I'm talking about. They are attractive because they have low operation expenses. And those are the ones that we chose. There we go, Tito. Those are my 6 decision variables. Crystal clear. I'm not going to go into the details why I chose those. I talked to several people in Chile. And I would be happy to hear Pablo's and Hervé's opinion if they correctly represent the vast universe of assets available. People in general said, well, you have world stocks, Chilean stocks, corporate, government. Money market would be something more like a risk-free rate. So it's a decent representation of indexes that exist. Again, trivial math. I said at this talk, it's not intensive at all. You want to maximize your returns, controlling the variance compared to the variance of the AFPs. Okay? The sum of your investments has to be 1, and the alphas are simply the percentage that you put in each of the indexes. Those regulation limits are the ones that I mentioned before. When you regulate for, you cannot invest more than 5%, this means E. You cannot invest more than 30%, this means C, etc. Okay? Very simple, right? Expected return. I put expected return. I just want to see if I can beat the AFPs with less variance, knowing the returns of these indexes. That's cheating. That's cheating, okay? I'm trying to find a feasible. You see the idea, right?
It's a nasty constraint.
Which one?
That orange.
Nah, it's not that nasty. Nah. It's a second order. Yeah.
If you know the return, then there's no more variance.
That's a good point. That's a good point. But the thing is, I have. I want this guy to be less or equal than a number. That's it. Okay.
If I know the return, then what's the uncertainty?
Yeah, but come on. Markowitz in 1952, he wrote a problem in which he knew the returns. Okay, but still, this is Markowitz classical. I mean, he won Nobel Prize for that. So here I'm just following the big Markowitz. I'm going to do a case where I don't know the returns. I will.
How do you compute the variance of one index fund? Using data?
Oh yeah. Here, this is really simple. Yeah, like that. I did what you think I did. I computed the sample average of each of the coordinates like that. I had a student.
Why alpha?
Because in Chile, people hate short sailing in Chile. So that's why. Try to follow Chilean case, but I could relax that as well. It wouldn't complicate me at all. Those are the results. For example, Fund A, the AFP got $223 after this period, and then I got more. I'm so smart. Knowing the returns, I did better. I was happy to see that. Let's see. Half of the variance, not half, but quite smaller, better returns in general. Fund E is a special case I'm going to talk about later. Chile, the AFPs were lucky, in my opinion, and they did well. It's very hard to beat Fund E. Fund E, it was a unique period, and they made good money. But still, we made more money with more variance, more standard deviation. Okay, so after we saw those results, this was like a couple of months ago, we said, well, there's a chance that we might obtain some nice results. This is clear? Okay? Said, well, by knowing the returns, by doing classical Markovits, we can beat them. So our approach, again, now it's the real thing. Looking in the literature, we learned that people look back 36 months. We found a couple of papers that said, check 36 months of data and we're good enough. Okay, we follow that. So I have to start in 2006, right? Because I have 2003, 4, and 5. So my analysis will be 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. We use the AFPs, and that's what I just mentioned. Ta-da! Those are the first results we obtain. This is the AFPs. Without doing rebalancing often. If you want to look at the returns per year, look, but those are the important numbers. Our returns 44, AFP 41, half of the variability. And let's look in more details. My intuition is that when things go wrong, we behave better. Indexes, they kind of, keep the damage controlled in a way. And take a look at the numbers. Returns, we did better, they did better. Overall, we did better with much less returns. On Fund A, it would have been better to do our approach and go to Cancun the whole year.
Is the same model using IIIO?
Yeah. Rolling your eyes is very simple. That's why I said very simple. I mean, I'm almost embarrassed of answering your question, Eduardo. I did 3 years, solved. 3 years more, different data, estimated, solved. I got all the alphas, and I computed this in an Excel spreadsheet. Fund B. Returns from AFPs in the period, 45.30, hours, 51.08, with half of the variance in a way. Again, 2008, they dropped a lot, we didn't drop that much, etc. Okay? Fund C, we did slightly better. No, we did better. Slightly better, okay, with smaller variance. I have to be honest. Fund D, we tied. Fund D we tied, same number. Fund E, we lost. Okay, so we won on A, B, and C. We tied on D, and we lost on E. I mean, I wanted to do more rebalancing. Let's try to do rebalancing every 6 months to beat the bastards. No, I said I would fix 1 year, and I lost. Oh, let's include more indexes. Maybe again, you have to stop at some point. I said, no, let's stick to that. Just for curiosity, maybe you guys are curious. Tito actually asked, this slide is for answering Tito's question. I don't want to show all the alphas of all the cases because as Eduardo said, I showed you some. Fund B in 08, Fund C in 06, Fund E in 2010. This slide is a bit silly, but since it's an audience of optimizers, it's kind of fun to look at the solution, right? This is the percentage on each of the funds. And as Hervé asked, everybody's positive, and they all sum 1. Okay? And those are the 6 funds that I mentioned before. If you want to, I can go back to them for curiosity. I should have put together, sorry. Growth stocks, Chilean stocks. The last one is less riskier. Okay. And the alphas correspond to that.
There, all the columns should sum 1?
I guess.
Because, for example, C doesn't.
I did something stupid then. You're right. I probably pasted wrongly, but it should. I'm sorry. The other ones they do, right?
Yeah,
I thought when I pasted, maybe there's a number. Maybe the alpha 5 is what remains to someone. Sorry. Anyway, look at the first and the third. Thanks for pointing this out. It's wrong. I also did with the CVAR, more answering what Hervé said. I agree. I mean, Markov is something old. This we did with random returns. Random returns, as you can imagine, you have like scenarios. Those scenarios are your input into the model. It's not like a return. You have like a sum, an average of everything that can probably happen. and you put a constraint like that instead of variance of index less or equal than variance of AFP, guess what? So this is modern, okay? This is modern risk measures, and the results are not that different. We tied on D, lost on E, and we...
But still, this is the CVAR with respect to best data, right?
Yep. And take a look at the results, still higher returns and smaller variance in all cases ABC, tied on D, lost on E. Okay?
What's the short P coefficient?
In a nutshell, that. So higher is better. Okay?
Just to make sure that so, but by construction, your variance is always going to be smaller than the...
Yes.
Variance or?
In the first model, that's good.
Yeah.
Construction is always small.
Yeah.
You just get better.
It could be empty, the problem, right? It could very well be empty. Actually, Tito, full disclosure, I have to say something for Fund E. It's a very honest talk, okay? Without 6, most of the problems were empty. Empty, feasible set, infeasible. Because E has very small variance, and then you have to include something like a money market to control that. It's impossible. The other ones, even though they are not super risky, this is not, but that's not good enough for being smaller than the variance. So we learned this the hard way. The student solved, and she came back to me and said, "Show me the results for Fund E. Infeasible, 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 infeasible." Okay. And then we included this money market Chile. But that's a secret. You're not supposed to ask this question. But really, if you want to do a similar experiment, try to include one of the indexes which is risk-free. Okay? Fine. Here, honesty. Consequences. Again, I think we could beat E. We can discuss that. But given what happened in this field, I think Fund E is hard to beat. A very interesting observation as well that we did afterwards. Okay, we tied E and lost D. Lost E, tied D. Why? Let's check the constraints. We are optimizers, right? What do we do with constraints? We learn in undergrads that we check the shadow prices. That's what the government says that you have to put. This is the constraint that all investors in Chile need to obey. Yeah, I have to beat E. D. Let's see what I can do to beat D. I started relaxing the constraint and checking if I could beat. They were 51, we were 44. And then when I started relaxing, you can beat them. I went to the Association of Private Investments and said, "Do you guys believe in those constraints?" And they said, "No, they are very tricky. And the government should be very careful because if you relax a little bit, you can have a huge impact on people's returns." So the government defines several constraints. I have a document here. I won't show, but I have it here that states these constraints. The government says constraints, 0.2, 0.45. Every year they redefine. And this can really damage your returns. If it was 0.2, not 0.2, but 0.15, you could have done better. So does it make sense to define this all year? How do they do it? Another interesting problem in passing, in my opinion. For example, the Lagrange multipliers were -28 and -10. What the hell does it mean? It means that if you relax -0.001, you multiply this by that, and then you can have increase in returns yearly between 1 and 2.8%. Interesting, right? So what can be done about it? Maybe the government shouldn't impose any of those constraints. Maybe they should say the variability shouldn't be greater than something. Maybe they should only put those types of constraints. Because it's very hard to define constraints. If you work in practical problems, you know that you can really make a lot of damage when you define constraints explicitly. I leave this question open as well. So wrap up. The results show that an investment strategy based on indexes can be superior, is superior for 3 funds, compared to the EFPs. Resilience, I think when markets are not good, our loss was significantly smaller. Remember, you defined this in the beginning of the year. What are the practical implications of that? I gave this presentation in the Superintendencia. They look at the association. They look at me with a strange face. They said, you're saying that you only need to work one day and you only need a small group of people. Each AFP has 30, 40 managers. They are very well paid. My suggestion is, again, maybe it's not necessary. I mean, and then what they do is really active management. They send people abroad. They send people to some countries. They make interviews with central banks. They send young people, hey, what's going to happen in this country? They gather information, and they have to report on that. If you decide to invest on Indonesia, it's because we went there and we found, yes or no? You have to report by law. I'm just saying that without doing any of that, you could choose passive investment strategies, and we would have beaten in this small period doing this strategy A, B, and C. Okay? A little bit what Hervé asked, and Hervé asked something even more sophisticated, but we could have 6-month rebalance, we could count the year starting in April. It would be nice to make all those experiments, okay, to see how it performed. So, conclusions, I'm going to finish here on time. We have a strategy based on passive investment through indexes. It's not totally passive because you're active in terms of the choices of the indexes. You choose them actively, you relax. You have no opportunity to rebalance. The implementation, unfortunately, would require changes in the legislation. We were talking to one of the AFPs. They liked what we proposed, but they said, we will not do it. I said, why? I don't know if you guys know how it works in Chile. Suppose we are the AFPs here. If you do poorly compared to the average, you're going to suffer gigantic penalizations. So what would you do? Would you risk something different from the 5 of us? Because if you do poorly, you're going to pay huge fees. Nah, you know, let's see what Giampiero is doing. Yeah, let's do something similar. They do this. They do this. And they all move similarly. So again, anything that you propose to them, they're going to find interesting, but I wouldn't do. Would you do? As an AFP? Probably not, because suppose you do poorly in 1 year, but then your strategy is good in the long run. So they said, fine, interesting, but we're not going to implement it. So it requires changes in the legislation, okay? Again, the limit constraints play a significant role. We saw pretty big Lagrange multipliers or shadow prices. And that's something that we're looking into right now. We're continuing this work with the student. We're finishing that. We want to see how this would change and what would be an alternative for defining those constraints, okay? And of course, if you guys know me, you know that I do those crazy stuff here. My model is maybe too simple, Eduardo. I mean, I solve it here, and then I forget about all the future, and I solve it again. You guys know that I do more complicated stuff, but again, we wanted to prove a point. I know how to do these models, and I plan to do them. But it's more complicated, and now I think there's some future to that. That's it. Very simple case we want to make. We want to push for passive investment. I think this topic is getting hotter in Chile. Again, the decision makers, they looked at us. Yeah, passive investment. Yeah, we weren't very successful here in Chile trying to push this. One, because the legislation doesn't help, right? And two, because, I don't know, they're not interested, they didn't like me, I don't know.
Wait, let's thank the speaker then.
Muchas gracias.